They called it the apocalypse flicker, a structural coding flaw in the new solar energy platform that was draining $15 million every hour. The top engineers from Caltech and Berkeley had spent 4 weeks attempting to patch it, and they were unsuccessful. But then, a 25-year-old barista who had just been dismissed for dropping a tray of lattes solved the entire conundrum in 60 seconds on the back of a damp receipt. When the billionaire founder traced her to a deteriorating tenement to thank her, he uncovered a secret that would shatter his corporation's desperate competition and reveal a deceit no one anticipated. You will not believe who she actually was. The stillness in the exclusive executive box of the Zenith, the priciest eatery in Seattle, was heavier than the platinum sconces mounted above. Asher Croft, the 35-year-old CEO of Croft Energy, glared at the touchscreen on the table with bloodshot eyes. He hadn't slept in 80 hours. His collar was undone, his normally meticulous hair was disheveled, and his hand twitched slightly as he reached for his tonic water. Opposite him sat Victor Sterling. Victor was older, refined, and exuded the smug satisfaction of a hawk observing injured prey expire. Victor was the director of Sterling Dynamics, Asher's fiercest competitor, and he was currently dominating the struggle. "Admit it, Asher," Victor said, slicing into his salmon with robotic accuracy. "The Solara initiative is finished. Your network continues to fail the stability metrics. The investors are withdrawing at dawn. My proposition to acquire your firm for pocket change remains valid until 11:59 p.m. Asher clenched his jaw. "The network functions, Victor. There is merely an anomaly in the programming. A parameter we cannot isolate." "An anomaly?" Victor chuckled. A dry scraping sound. "You're losing $150 million daily pursuing an anomaly. Your technicians are inept. You are inept. Accept the terms, Asher. Let the adults manage the power industry." Asher felt his stomach churn. The Solara initiative was meant to be limitless, clean power for the entire western seaboard. It was his grandmother's vision. If he sold to Victor, Victor would dismantle it for parts, patent the technology, and charge triple what consumers were currently paying. It would be a catastrophe for the planet, but a windfall for Victor. "I have 2 hours," Asher stated, his voice hushed. "My department is running a diagnostic right now. If the protocol stabilizes, it won't," Victor interjected, dabbing his mouth with a linen napkin. "I know your programming better than you do. It's fundamentally flawed. You're attempting to balance a mountain on a needle." The atmosphere in the room was stifling. Asher examined the stacks of printed code spread out on the table. Thousands of lines of complex Ruby and C composite scripts that his senior developers had printed in a frantic effort to visually detect the error. It looked like anarchy. He was unaware that the resolution to his predicament wasn't in the mind of a doctorate holder or a technology veteran. It was currently steadying a platter of soiled dishes, walking toward his table with a slight hobble. Maya Diaz adjusted her apron, trying to conceal the shaking in her hands. She had been on her feet for 14 hours straight. Her footwear was worn thin at the sole, sending a sharp ache up her leg with every stride. But she couldn't afford replacements. She couldn't afford anything. She was 25, but her eyes held the fatigue of someone who had experienced a millennium. "Table 8 requires more sparkling water, Maya. Accelerate." The floor supervisor, Mr. Dalton, hissed at her as she passed the service area. Dalton was a despot who reveled in docking wages for the slightest transgression. "Yes, sir," Maya whispered, keeping her head low. She approached table 8, the VIP compartment. She knew who was seated there. Everyone did. Asher Croft, the tech prodigy. She had seen his image on the television in the staff break room. She knew he was struggling. As she neared the table to top up the water glasses, she tried to become imperceptible. It was a survival tactic. Avoid observation, avoid harm, simply perform the duties. But as she poured the water into Asher's glass, her gaze drifted to the documents spread across the table. Typically to a server, these papers would look like nonsense, just random letters, braces, and numbers. But to Maya, they didn't look like algebra. They looked like symphony. She saw the cadence of the code. She saw the progression. And instantly, disruptively, she saw the discord. It was a localized element in the iterative function on page 5. It was defined as a whole number, but in the subroutine, it was being invoked as a decimal. It was a minuscule semantic error that would cause the entire energy capacity to rebound upon itself, generating infinite feedback. That was the reason the network was crashing. She stared at it. It was so evident. It was shouting at her. "Cease looking," she instructed herself. "You're just a barista. You quit college. You're nobody." But the imperative to correct it was a physical compulsion in her mind. She paused, the carafe of water suspended over the glass. "Do you mind?" Victor Sterling snapped, startling her. "You're hovering." Maya recoiled. Her hands spasmed. The carafe tipped too far. Icy water overflowed, splashing onto the fringe of the table, saturating the corner of the linen and spattering onto Victor's costly silk suit. "You imbecile!" Victor bellowed, leaping up. "Observe what you've done. This is a $6,000 suit." Asher looked up, roused from his stupor. "It's only water, Victor. Relax, relax. This ineptitude is precisely why your company is collapsing, Asher. You surround yourself with fools." Victor redirected his fury at Maya. "Summon the manager immediately." Maya was trembling. "I am profoundly sorry, sir. I became distracted." "Distracted?" Victor scoffed. "By what?" Contemplating which table to solicit gratuities from next. Mr. Dalton materialized instantly, his face ashen with terror when he saw who was enraged. "Mr. Sterling, Mr. Croft, I am exceptionally apologetic. Is this female troubling you? She ruined my attire." Victor spat. Dalton turned to Maya, his eyes glacial. "Maya, retrieve your belongings. You are terminated. Exit the premises." "Please," Maya whispered, tears welling up. "I require this shift. I have rent due tomorrow. My mother's medication." "I am indifferent," Dalton said. "Depart now, before I summon security." Maya felt the floor vanish beneath her. Fired again. She glanced at Asher, hoping for a rescue, but he was back to staring at his tablet, his head in his hands, immersed in his own ordeal. He hadn't even truly noticed her. She turned to leave, wiping her eyes, but as she passed the table one last time to grip her tray, she looked at the code again. The flaw was still there, ridiculing her, ridiculing Asher. She couldn't abandon it. Even if he didn't salvage her employment, she couldn't let the music remain fractured. She retrieved a pen from her apron pocket. She snatched a pristine coaster from the center of the table. "What are you attempting?" Dalton barked. "I instructed you to leave." "1 second," Maya said, her voice suddenly resolute. She transcribed 3 lines of code onto the coaster. Swift, accurate, she encircled the block of text on the paper confronting Asher, drew an arrow to her coaster, and positioned it delicately beside his hand. "It's a floating decimal error," she said softly to Asher. "Line 512. You must conclude the loop before the iterative invocation." "Pardon me?" Asher looked up, perplexed. "Get out!" Dalton seized Maya's arm and propelled her away toward the kitchen. "Wait," Asher said, but they had already vanished. The double door swung shut, consuming the barista, who had just lost everything. The table was silent again. Victor Sterling brushed the moisture off his trousers and sat back down, looking self-satisfied. "Pitiable," Victor sneered. "You cannot even supervise the personnel in the establishment you're dining at. How do you anticipate running conglomerate?" Asher was not listening. He was looking at the coaster. Written in jagged, hurried black ink were 3 lines of code. "If power capacity threshold return, stabilize whole number val," and beneath it a memo. "It's not a device malfunction. It's a data structure discrepancy in the conversion protocol." Asher scowled. He looked at the printed sheet where she had gestured. Line 512. He traced the reasoning in his mind. Variable enters as decimal, processed, returned. His eyes widened. "Oh my stars," he whispered. "What?" Victor asked, irritated. "Did she write her contact information?" Pathetic. Asher grabbed his tablet. He accessed the remote console to his primary server. His fingers flew across the virtual keypad, entering the precise lines Maya had transcribed on the coaster. "What are you attempting?" Victor asked, his tone shifting from mockery to suspicion. "Silence, Victor," Asher muttered. He hit compile and execute diagnostic. Usually the simulation failed at 45 front. The red indicator would flash and the system would collapse. The indicator loaded 20%, 40%, 45%, 46%. Asher held his breath. 50%, 80%, 100%. System stable. Output efficiency 99.9%. The green text radiated on the screen like a divine artifact. Asher sat back, astonished. The apocalypse flicker was eradicated. The $150 million issue had been resolved by a barista in 10 seconds. He looked at the clock, 9:05 p.m. He had preserved the company. Then the realization struck him. He looked at the coaster again. This was not merely a fortunate guess. This was brilliance level. This was the kind of insight that only 1 in a billion programmers possessed. Who was that? Asher asked aloud, his voice trembling. Who cares? Victor stood up, trying to see the screen. Why are you grinning? Did the acquisition proceed? Asher stood up, ignoring Victor completely. He looked at the manager, Dalton, who was lingering nearby, looking petrified. Where is she? Asher demanded. Dalton blinked. Who? The clumsy female. I dismissed her, Mr. Croft. I expelled her out the back exit. She will not disturb you again. You dismissed her? Asher's voice escalated to a shout. You fool! That female just rescued my corporation. The entire restaurant fell silent. Patrons lowered their utensils. Victor Sterling's face went pale. Asher grabbed the coaster, the most invaluable piece of paper in the universe, and ran toward the kitchen. Mr. Croft! Dalton chased after him. Asher burst through the kitchen doors. Chefs stopped chopping. Dishwashers froze. The barista! Asher yelled. Maya, where is she? A young runner, looking terrified, pointed to the rear exit. She departed, sir, about 7 minutes past. She was weeping. Asher ran out the back door into the rainy service alley. It was vacant, just dumpsters and wet concrete reflecting the neon glow of the metropolis. She was gone. Asher stood in the rain, clutching the coaster. He didn't know her family name. He didn't know where she resided. All he knew was that a prodigy was walking the avenues of Seattle with no occupation, and he owed her everything. He retrieved his phone and dialed his head of security, a former operative named Vance. Vance, Asher said, I require you to locate someone, a barista from the Zenith. Her given name is Maya. I am indifferent to the cost. I am indifferent to whom you must bribe. Locate her tonight. Asher Croft paced the floor of his penthouse office at Croft Energy. The digital timepiece on the partition read 10:50 p.m. The cutoff for the investor withdrawal was midnight. The code Maya had written on the coaster was operating impeccably, but the investors were nervous. They had heard rumors of the conflict at the restaurant. They required a presence to reassure them. They required the lead architect to explain why the system was suddenly stable. And Asher couldn't tell them the lead architect was a dismissed barista he couldn't find. His head of security, Vance, walked in. Vance was a man who looked like he was sculpted from basalt, wearing a suit that cost more than most vehicles. We located her, Vance said, tossing a slim manila file onto Asher's glass desk. Asher ripped it open. Where? It was challenging, Vance said, his voice gravelly. She goes by Maya Diaz, but that's an alias. Her identification number is genuine, but it belongs to a girl who passed away in a collision in Oregon 5 years ago. She's existing off the grid, Asher. Currency only. No plastic, no electronic trace. She's a felon? Asher asked, looking at the hazy photograph appended to the file. It was a surveillance shot from a subway camera. She looked fatigued, huddled in an oversized overcoat. No, Vance shook his head. She's not evading the authorities. She's concealing from someone. We traced her through the employment logs of the staffing agency the restaurant utilizes. She resides in the Central District, a dilapidated structure slated for demolition next cycle. Address is 51 West 120th Street. Asher grabbed his jacket. Summon the car. Sir, Vance cautioned, stepping in front of him. Victor Sterling is aware of her, too. Asher froze. House Sterling has operatives everywhere. His chauffeur at the restaurant saw you retrieve the coaster. Sterling had his technology squad analyze the photo of the coaster taken by the security cameras at the Zenith. He knows the code succeeded, and he knows who wrote it. Asher felt a shiver run down his spine. Victor Sterling wasn't just a corporate executive, he was a predator. If Victor knew that a barista possessed the solution to the next generation of power tech, he wouldn't simply offer her a position. He would compel her into silence. "We must reach her first," Asher said, his voice firm. Now, meanwhile, across the city, in the rear compartment of a black sedan, Victor Sterling was looking at a tablet. On the display was a magnified image of the barista's script. He wasn't looking at the code. He was looking at the distinct way she wrote the letter G in the governance command. It was a peculiar script, a signature. "It is impossible," Victor whispered, his face draining of color. "He's deceased. Thomas is deceased." He tapped his communication device. "Adjustment of plans. We are not proceeding to the office. Ascertain where that female resides and dispatch the containment team." "Sir," the chauffeur asked anxiously. "The containment team?" "You understood me," Victor hissed. "That female is a loose thread I assumed I secured 12 cycles ago. She cannot converse with Asher Croft. If she does, I lose everything." The rain was battering against the fractured window of apartment 5C. Maya sat on the edge of her pallet, which was on the floor. The space was minuscule. The wall covering was peeling, revealing decay underneath. The only illumination came from the radiance of 4 computer screens set up on a folding utility table in the corner. This was her refuge. To the world, she was Maya, the clumsy barista. But here, in the blue light of the displays, she was Oracle. On the bed beside her lay a young man, about 17, asleep. He was breathing heavily, a film of perspiration on his forehead. This was Alex, her younger sibling. He had pulmonary fibrosis. The prescription cost $3,000 monthly. The barista employment barely covered half of that. She had been pirating Wi-Fi from the cafe downstairs to undertake freelance programming assignments on the dark web for minimal pay, just to maintain the necessities. And now she was dismissed. Maya put her face in her hands. "What am I going to attempt?" she whispered to the empty room. She looked at the displays. She had been monitoring the Croft Energy server logs illicitly, naturally. She saw that her remedy had been effective. The network was stable. Asher Croft was going to earn billions, and she was going to be evicted on Thursday. There was a forceful rap on the door. Maya jumped, her heart hammered against her ribs. It was late. No one knocked this late except the proprietor or creditors. "Who is it?" she called out, her voice quivering. "Maya Diaz." A deep masculine voice came through the wood. "My designation is Asher Croft. Unlock the door." Maya stopped breathing. He located her. Panic surged through her. If Asher Croft was here, the media would follow. And if the media followed, he would see her. The individual she had spent 12 years fleeing from. "Go away," she yelled. "I did nothing. Leave me solitary." "Maya, please." Asher's voice was muffled, but imperative. "I am not here to apprehend you. I am here to express gratitude, and I believe you are in peril." Peril. She looked at Alex. If she didn't open the door and they breached it, it would wake him. It would frighten him. She unlocked the 3 deadbolts and opened the door a crack, keeping the safety chain engaged. Asher Croft stood in the corridor, soaked, still in his formal wear, flanked by the intimidating behemoth Vance. Asher looked incongruous amid the odor of mold and aged cooking oil. "What do you require?" she asked, her eyes darting between them. "You preserved my corporation tonight," Asher said, looking her directly in the eyes. "I desire to know why, and I desire to know how a barista comprehends the deepest level of the Solara core design better than my chief engineer." "I speculated," Maya said quickly. It was a fortunate speculation. "Here." She tried to push a crumpled $20 bill through the crack. "That is for the cleaning service. I apologize about your acquaintance's suit. Now, please depart." "He is not my acquaintance," Asher said, ignoring the money. "Victor Sterling is a shark, and right now his private security detachment is 4 blocks away proceeding here." Vance intercepted their transmissions. Maya's face went white. She unlatched the chain and threw the door open. "Sterling knows," she whispered. "Does he know who I am?" Asher stepped into the dwelling, his eyes widening as he absorbed the room. He saw the poverty, the leaking ceiling, But then he looked at the corner. He saw the server apparatus she had constructed out of obsolete gaming consoles and stolen components. He saw the code scrolling on the screens. It wasn't simply random intrusion. She was reconstructing his entire operational system line by line, optimizing it in real time. "Who are you?" Asher asked, his voice filled with admiration. Maya walked over to the bed and pulled the cover up over her brother's shoulders. She turned to Asher, her eyes firm and weary. "My designation is not Maya Diaz," she said softly. "My designation is Maya Thorne. My father was Thomas Thorne." Asher gasped. The air left his lungs. Thomas Thorne, the pioneer of contemporary energy, the man who had allegedly committed suicide 12 years ago after being indicted for corporate espionage. The man who had co-founded Sterling Dynamics with Victor Sterling. Thomas Thorne perished in confinement. Asher said he was found guilty of vending state secrets. "He was framed," Maya said, tears stinging her eyes. "Victor Sterling framed him. My father conceived the algorithm you employ today. Victor wished to militarize it. My dad refused. So Victor planted proof, ruined his standing, and when my dad attempted to speak up, he was discovered deceased in his cell." She stepped nearer to Asher. "Victor confiscated everything from us. Our residence, our funds, our designation. I was 13. I took Alex and fled. I have been hiding ever since. If Victor knows I am present, he is not arriving to offer me a position, Mr. Croft. He is arriving to complete what he initiated." Suddenly, Vance touched his earpiece. He whirled around, drawing a firearm from inside his jacket. "Asher," Vance barked. "We have visitors. They are in the stairwell. 7 hostiles, heavy equipment." Asher looked at Maya. He looked at the sleeping boy. "Seize your sibling," Asher commanded. "We are departing now." The departure from the Central District dwelling is a blur of mayhem. Maya roused Alex, who was groggy and bewildered. "It's acceptable, Alex. We must go for a brief journey. Cling to me." Vance kicked the rear door of the dwelling open, leading to the emergency exit. The rain was torrential now. "Go!" Vance shouted. Asher assisted Maya lift Alex through the aperture. Below them in the alley, headlights pierced the darkness. Victor Sterling's personnel were already surrounding the structure. "They are obstructing the exits," Asher said, surveying the alley. "My vehicle is out front. We cannot access it." "My transportation," Maya said. "What?" "I possess a scooter. It is old, but it operates. It is beneath the tarp in the courtyard." Asher looked at her. "I have a billion-dollar firm to rescue, and you desire us to escape on a motorized two-wheeler. Do you possess a superior proposal?" Maya snapped. They rushed down the decaying metal staircase. Gunshots erupted, silenced bursts that sparked against the railing near Asher's hand. "Move." Vance returned fire, providing concealment. "Get them away from here, boss. I will delay them." Asher, Maya, and Alex sprinted across the wet cement of the courtyard. Maya ripped the tarp off an antique, battered Vespa scooter. She kick-started it. It roared to life with a deafening clamor. "Mount it!" she yelled. Asher straddled the rear, compressing Alex between him and Maya. It was a tight squeeze. "Hold on firmly!" Maya revved the motor and released the clutch. The scooter surged forward, smashing through the wooden perimeter of the courtyard and sliding onto the parallel street. They sped away just as 4 black SUVs screeched around the bend to pursue them. The pursuit through the city was harrowing. Maya drove like a maniac, navigating through oncoming traffic, ignoring red signals, skidding around corners with sparks flying from the footrests. Asher clutched Alex, his heart in his throat. He had negotiated multi-billion-dollar mergers, but he had never been this frightened. They lost the SUVs in the maze of streets near the West Seattle Bridge. 40 minutes later, soaked and shuddering, they pulled into the subterranean parking facility of Croft Energy Tower. The security detail met them at the lift. Asher's private physician was summoned for Alex. "Attend to him," Asher ordered the medical team as they loaded Alex onto a wheeled cot. "Whatever he requires, the finest medicine, the finest quarters." "I am not abandoning him," Maya said, shivering, her barista uniform clinging to her skin. "He is secure here," Asher said, placing his hands on her shoulders. "No one enters this edifice without my biometric scan. But Maya, we have a graver predicament." "What?" Observe. Asher pointed to the massive display in the foyer. It was a news bulletin. Urgent report. Croft Energy accused of proprietary rights theft. Victor Sterling was on the screen looking solemn and serious at a press conference. It brings me no gratification to declare this, Victor was saying to the cameras. But we possess proof that the code utilized in the Solar Initiative was pirated directly from Sterling Dynamics. Asher Croft did not correct the network. He intruded my private servers and stole a confidential remedy. I am submitting an instantaneous restraining order to close Croft Energy and seize the Solar network. Asher stared at the screen. He is fabricating. He is attempting to immobilize our assets so the investors panic. Maya looked at the screen, her eyes narrowing. He didn't merely fabricate, Asher. Look at the timeline stamp on the server logs behind him in the footage. Asher squinted. What about it? That is not a stationary image, Maya said, her brain reverting back into genius mode. That is a continuous feed. He is not merely suing you. He is actively hacking you at this moment. What? He is employing the restraining order as a diversion, Maya said, running toward the lift. He is injecting a malicious program into your core system through the legal discovery channel. If that program reaches the core, it will not merely shut down the network, it will overcharge the reactors. It will instigate a meltdown. Asher turned pale. A meltdown would obliterate half the metropolis. It would claim millions of lives. We must halt it, Asher said. We cannot halt it from the exterior, Maya said as the lift doors opened to the server floor. He is already inside the fire barrier. The sole method to halt him is to permit him entry. Permit him entry? Asher shouted. Are you unhinged? Trust me, Maya said, seating herself at the primary terminal chair. She cracked her knuckles. The timid barista was gone. The daughter of Thomas Thorne had assumed command. I require total administrator clearance, and she commanded. Override sequence beta 2. Asher didn't hesitate. He typed in his master key. It is all yours. Greetings, Victor, Maya whispered to the screen as her fingers flew across the keyboard. You desired a conflict? You have one. The server room of Croft Energy was frigid, maintained at a steady 58 degrees to cool the colossal supercomputers. But Maya was perspiring on the enormous wall of screens. A digital battle was in progress. It wasn't an interactive game. It was a depiction of network movement. Red lines were inundating the Solara network, consuming the blue lines of the defense protocols. He is aggressively bypassing the fire barrier, Maya said, her fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard. He is utilizing a quantum decryption algorithm. I have never observed processing capability this intense. He must be routing it through a network of compromised machines in Eastern Asia. Asher stood behind her, watching the temperature indicator of the fusion core. Warning core temp 99% critical. Maya, Asher said, his voice strained. We have 1 minute before the safety closures dissolve. If that occurs, the reactor reaches critical mass. We must shut it down. If we shut it down manually, Maya said without looking up, Victor prevails. He will assert the technology is unreliable. The valuation will drop to zero, and his hostile acquisition initiates automatically. We forfeit the firm. We forfeit the truth. I am indifferent about the firm, Asher yelled. I care about the 12 million inhabitants in Seattle. Shut it down. No, Maya whispered. I nearly have him. Maya, trust me, she screamed back. It was the first instance she had ever raised her voice at him. My father composed the initial core for this configuration. He knew Victor would eventually attempt to steal it. He constructed a contingency, a snare. It is designated a fail-safe measure. Maya said it is concealed in the floating decimal logic. The identical flaw I rectified on the coaster. That was not a flaw. That was the access point on the screen. The red lines breached the final fire barrier. System breached. Administrator access granted to remote user. V. Sterling. He is inside. Asher groaned. It is concluded. The lights in the room flickered red. The alarm began to wail. In his office across town, Victor Sterling watched his screen with satisfaction. Farewell, Asher, he muttered. He hovered his pointer over the instruction. Initiate core expulsion. Victor clicked, but nothing occurred. On Maya's screen, a new command line materialized. It blinked green. Unrecognized operator identified. Execute protocol. Thorn vindication. Suddenly, the red lines on the map didn't just cease, they reversed. "What is this?" Victor screamed at his computer. His screen immobilized. Files began to open independently. Terabytes of data, correspondence, offshore accounts, schematics, elimination directives began to upload. "He did not intrude us," Maya said, leaning back in her chair, her chest heaving. "I opened the portal and permitted him entry, and when he walked in, he stepped on a digital mine." "What is it accomplishing?" Asher asked, watching the data stream. "It is not merely obstructing him," Maya smiled, a fierce, menacing smile. "It is extracting him. It is duplicating every single file from the Sterling Dynamics core system and broadcasting it to the FBI, the SEC, and the Seattle Chronicle." "You just intruded the intruder," Asher breathed. "No," Maya said, looking at the screen where a portrait of her father had momentarily flashed. "I just finalized my dad's endeavor." The alarm stopped. The lights reverted to a steady blue. Core temp stabilizing, system secure. Asher looked at Maya. She looked small in the large ergonomic chair, wearing an oversized hooded top she had borrowed from a programmer. She didn't look like a barista anymore. She looked like a ruler. "We have the proof," Asher said. "We have everything." "Not yet." Maya stood up, her legs shaking slightly. "The investors' gathering is at a.m. Victor will be present. He is unaware of what just occurred. He believes he disabled your system. He is going to attempt to destroy us," Asher said. "Then let us proceed to the memorial service," Maya said, "and let us observe who ends up in the casket." The conference room on the 60th floor of Croft Energy was a bastion of glass and steel, typically a place of foresight and future construction. Today it felt like a mortuary. 14 of the most influential investors in the worldwide energy sector sat around the long mahogany table. The air was heavy with tension and the aroma of costly coffee. At the head of the table, the CEO's leather seat sat vacant. Victor Sterling sat opposite it. He didn't look like a rival. He looked like the successor. He checked his Rolex chronometer, a subtle gesture that shouted impatience. "Gentlemen," Victor began, his voice smooth and dripping with practiced concern, "I derive no satisfaction from this. Truly, to witness a heritage like the Croft lineage crumble, it is devastating. But we must be pragmatists." He stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the metropolis. "Asher is a brilliant youth, but that is the complication. He is a youth. The collapse last night confirmed that Croft Energy lacks the maturity to manage the Solar network. The code is unreliable. The management is erratic. The valuation has plummeted 50% in pre-market transactions. The populace has lost confidence. It is a slaughter." The lead investor, Mr. Remington, grumbled, rubbing his temples. "We are losing millions every minute, Victor. What are you advocating?" Victor turned, a predatory smile flashing momentarily before he concealed it with solemnity. "I am advocating a salvation. Sterling Dynamics is prepared to acquire Croft Energy instantly. I will purchase you out at 55 cents on the dollar. I will absorb the deficits, correct the code with my superior engineering cadre, and preserve your portfolios." 55. Another investor scowled. "That is larceny. It is benevolence." Victor shot back, his voice hardening. "By midday, this firm will be valued at zero. Asher is likely halfway to the Maldives by now, concealing from his debacle. You have 10 minutes to sign, or I withdraw and allow you to perish." The room fell silent. The investors looked at each other. They were entrapped. Mr. Remington sighed, defeated, and uncapped his fine writing instrument. "Very well," Remington said. "Pass the documents." Boom! The heavy double oak doors didn't just open. They were thrown open with sufficient force to rattle the glass panels. Every head in the room snapped toward the entrance. Asher Croft strode in. He wasn't concealing in the Maldives. He was clean-shaven, wearing a charcoal custom suit that fit like an armor, and his eyes were blazing with a cold, focused rage. "Put the instrument down, Remington," Asher commanded, his voice echoing off the walls. "Asher," Victor laughed, though his eyes darted nervously to the door. "So kind of you to join us. We were merely discussing the stipulations of your surrender. There will not be a surrender today, Victor, Asher said, walking to the head of the table. And I did not arrive alone. Asher stepped aside. Maya walked into the room to Victor and to everyone else who had been at the restaurant the night before. The metamorphosis was physically stunning. The timid, trembling barista in the stained apron was gone. In her place was a woman radiating authority. She wore a sharp obsidian-tailored trouser suit that emphasized her posture. Her hair was drawn back in a severe, elegant coil. She held a thick leather portfolio against her chest, not like a shield, but like an instrument. She walked with a limp, but she didn't conceal it. She walked with the rhythm of someone who had survived a battle. "Who is this?" Mr. Remington asked, perplexed. Victor scoffed, a cruel smirk returning to his face. "You must be jesting, Asher. This is humiliating. This is the barista from the Zenith, the clumsy female who spilled water on my $6,000 suit." He turned to the board, spreading his hands dramatically. Has he finally lost his mind? He is bringing the domestic staff to a board assembly. What is she going to attempt? Take our beverage requests. A few investors chuckled nervously. Asher didn't smile. He pulled out the chair at the head of the table, his chair, and gestured for Maya to sit. "She is not the domestic staff, Victor," Asher said, his voice dropping an octave, lethally serious. "And she is not here to receive requests. She is here to issue them." Maya sat down. She placed the portfolio on the table with a heavy impact. She looked Victor dead in the eyes. "Greetings, Victor," she said. Her voice was calm, lucid, and terrifyingly familiar to him. "You," Victor narrowed his eyes. "I recognize you. You are the female my security detail couldn't locate." "I am the female you attempted to obliterate," Maya said. She stood up again, unable to remain seated with the adrenaline coursing through her. "My name is not Maya Diaz. My name is Maya Thorne." The silence that followed was absolute. It sucked the air out of the room. "Thorne?" Remington whispered. "As in Thomas Thorne." "My father," Maya announced, addressing the board. "The co-founder of Sterling Dynamics. The man who composed the very code you are all contending over. And the man who was assassinated to keep it quiet. Fabrication." Victor slammed his hand on the table, his composure fracturing. "Thomas Thorne was a felon who committed suicide in confinement. And you? You are a deceit. Security, remove this hysterical female from here." "Be seated, Victor," Asher roared. "No one is departing until she concludes." Maya didn't flinch at Victor's outburst. She simply opened her portfolio and pulled out a remote device. "You informed the world my father embezzled from you," Maya said, her voice steady. "You ruined his reputation. You framed him for espionage. You confiscated our residence, our funds, and his life. But you committed one error, Victor." "And what was that?" Victor spat, sweat beading on his forehead. "You presumed he was as avaricious as you," Maya said. "He was not. He was an artisan, and artisans sign their creations." She clicked the remote. The massive presentation screen behind Victor roared to life. "Exhibit B," Maya said. The screen displayed the source code of the Solara network, thousands of lines of intricate mathematics. "Victor asserts this is his confidential technology," Maya explained to the investors. "But look at the binary structure in the core kernel." She typed a command on a wireless keyboard. The code on the screen shifted. The zeros and ones rearranged themselves, highlighting specific lines in brilliant red. "My father employed a cryptographic key based on the harmonic scale." Maya said, "If you translate the variables into notes and the notes into text, it doesn't merely operate the network, it narrates a history." The red text on the screen decoded in real time. "Proprietary asset of Thomas Thorne, if accessed by V. Sterling, initiate purge protocol." "It's a digital biometric imprint," Asher added. "It's permanently embedded into the foundation. You cannot eliminate it without devastating the entire network." "Victor has been vending you pilfered merchandise for 12 years. Victor was pale now, his breathing shallow. "That substantiates nothing. It's a minor defect." "A happenstance? Is this a happenstance too?" Maya clicked the remote again. The screen changed. It was a video file. Granulated black and white, timestamp 12 years past. The boardroom gasped. It was footage from inside a prison cell. It showed a younger Victor Sterling handing a suitcase to a correctional officer. It showed the officer deactivating the surveillance devices outside Thomas Thorne's cell. "We discovered this on your private server last night," Maya said coldly. "When you attempted to intrude Croft Energy, you opened a reciprocal route. I downloaded your entire existence, Victor. Every bribe, every payment, every directive. That's an advanced forgery." Victor screamed, backing away from the table. "That's artificial intelligence. You fabricated that." "And the financial transfers?" Maya asked, throwing a stack of printed documents across the table. They slid across the mahogany, stopping right in front of Mr. Remington. Remington picked them up. His hands shook. "These are electronic transfers from your personal account to the contract killer syndicate dated yesterday. 600,000. Remington looked up at Victor with pure revulsion. "You issued a contract on a barista." "She is a loose thread," Victor yelled, suddenly realizing he had confessed too much. He clamped his hand over his mouth. "She is not a loose thread," Asher said, stepping closer to Victor. "She is the CEO of the firm that just acquired you." "What?" Victor whispered. "The purge protocol Maya mentioned." Asher smiled. "When it activated last night, it didn't merely reveal your files. It executed a pre-written divestment directive. Your automated trading bots jettisoned your Sterling Dynamics stock the instant the proof reached the SEC registry. The price crashed to negligible value and Croft Energy acquired the controlling interest 10 minutes ago." Victor fell back into his chair. He had lost everything: his firm, his standing, his freedom. The double doors opened one last time. 5 federal agents in windbreakers marked DEA entered the room. Victor Sterling, the lead agent, barked, holding up a warrant. "Stand up and place your hands behind your back." Victor looked at the board members, imploring for assistance. They all turned their chairs away, refusing to look at him. As the agents shackled him and dragged him past the table, Victor stopped in front of Maya. "You were just a barista," he hissed, his eyes wild. "You were insignificant." Maya looked at him, her expression calm and slightly empathetic. She touched the silver medallion she wore, her father's geometric pattern. "I was never insignificant, Victor," she said softly. "I was the individual observing you while you were too preoccupied looking in the reflection." The agents hauled him out. The door slammed shut. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't oppressive anymore. It was the silence of a tempest that had finally subsided. Mr. Remington stood up slowly. He looked at Asher, then he looked at Maya. He buttoned his jacket and extended a hand toward the young woman. "Ms. Thorne," Remington said with newfound deference, "it appears we have much to deliberate. Please take the head of the table." The days following the apprehension of Victor Sterling were a whirlwind of flashing bulbs and legal declarations. The narrative was too compelling for the news cycle to disregard. The destitute barista who vanquished a billionaire. They dubbed her the Phoenix of Silicon Heights, a moniker Maya absolutely despised. 4 days after the board assembly, the foyer of Croft Energy was overflowing. But amidst the turbulence, a small, gratifying moment of retribution was unfolding near the reception counter. Mr. Dalton, the sweaty, arrogant supervisor of the Zenith restaurant, was standing there. He was holding a bouquet of cheap blossoms, arguing with his security guard. "You do not comprehend," Dalton pleaded, wiping his forehead with a cloth. "I am an old associate of Ms. Thorne. I provided her her inaugural employment. We share a history. I merely wish to congratulate her." The lift doors chimed open. The foyer went silent. Maya walked out, flanked by Asher and Vance. She wasn't concealing anymore. She walked with her head held high, examining a tablet screen. "Maya, Maya, dearest," Dalton shouted, waving the flowers. Maya stopped. She looked up, confused for a moment before recognition dawned on her face. She walked over to the rope partition, signaling for Vance to permit him speech. "Mr. Dalton," Maya said coolly, "I did not anticipate encountering you here. I merely wished to convey how proud I am," Dalton stammered, his smile faltering under her intense gaze. "I always recognized you were exceptional. You know about that misunderstanding with the water. I was hoping we could put that behind us. In fact, Commerce has been sluggish since the scandal broke about Victor getting arrested at my table. I was hoping perhaps Croft Energy requires a catering associate. Asher stepped forward, his face darkening. You dismissed her for spilling water, Dalton, and then you accepted a bribe from Victor Sterling to betray her location. You are fortunate I do not have you apprehended as an accessory. Dalton turned pale. I was unaware. Maya raised a hand to stop Asher. She looked at Dalton, not with resentment, but with the indifference of a behemoth looking at an insect. Retain the blossoms, Mr. Dalton, she said softly. And regarding your restaurant, I would not be concerned about commerce being sluggish. Truly? Dalton looked hopeful. Yes, Maya said, because I just purchased the edifice the Zenith is situated in. Your lease expires next month. I am transforming it into a complimentary programming academy for marginalized adolescents. You have 30 days to vacate. She turned on her heel and walked away. Dalton dropped the flowers, watching his livelihood dissipate as the security guards escorted him out. 5 months later, the panorama from the new executive quarters of the Thorncroft Foundation was breathtaking. It overlooked the entire city, a city now powered by the clean, boundless, and stable energy of the Solara network. Maya stood by the floor-to-ceiling window. She was holding a beverage cup, but for the first time in 12 years, she wasn't serving it to anyone. She was drinking it, watching the twilight paint the skyline gold. You know, Asher's voice came from the entryway. The board is still pressuring me. They desire you to assume the co-CEO designation. They believe the barista who preserved the world is the finest promotional slogan we have ever had. Maya laughed, turning around. She looked healthier now. The dark circles under her eyes were gone. She was wearing a soft cream pullover and denim trousers, comfortable, practical herself. I am not a CEO, Asher, she said. I am a programmer. I detest meetings. I detest stakeholders. I prefer the back end. I prefer the logic. You handle the executives and the handshakes. I will handle the configurations. Fair enough, Asher said, walking into the room. He looked different, too. The burden of his grandmother's legacy was no longer crushing him. He wore it proudly now. How is Alex? Maya's face brightened. He is magnificent. The specialist you flew in from Germany. They worked a miracle. His lung capacity is up to 95%. He is participating in association football this afternoon. For the first time in his existence, he can run without being apprehensive. Asher nodded, a genuine smile touching his lips. That is the finest return on investment I have ever executed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet case. What is this? Maya asked, putting her beverage down. Consider it a signing incentive, Asher said. Or perhaps a thank you for preserving my existence. I preserved your corporation, Maya corrected. No. Asher stepped closer, his voice low. I was sinking, Maya, just like the network. I was trapped in an iteration, attempting to satisfy everyone, attempting to emulate Victor. You deciphered the code. You rectified me. Maya opened the case. Inside lay a delicate silver medallion. The pendant was a unique, complex geometric configuration, a sequence of intersecting lines and curves. It is gorgeous, she whispered. What is the form? It is the visual depiction of your father's algorithm, Asher explained. I had the 3D modelers map out the music you observed on the coaster. That is the form of the code that preserved the world. Tears welled in Maya's eyes. She touched the cold metal. For years, her father's creation had been a source of distress and danger. Now it was something beautiful she could wear close to her heart. Here, Asher said, allow me. He secured the clasp around her neck. His fingers brushed her skin, lingering for a second longer than necessary. There was a spark there, a quiet, unexpressed potential for something more than just commerce. But neither of them rushed it. They had ample time. Maya walked back to the window and looked at her reflection in the glass. She didn't see a casualty. She didn't see a barista. She saw Maya Thorne. So she said, wiping her eyes and turning back to her massive desk where 4 monitors were humming with streams of data. I was looking at the atmospheric stabilizers for the Eastern Seaboard expansion. I believe there's a minor defect in line 600. The altitude parameter is erroneous. Asher groaned, laughing. Can we take 1 day respite? We just conquered the sector. Nope, Maya grinned, sitting down and cracking her knuckles. The world is replete with minor defects, Asher, and meal period is concluded. She began to type. Swift, accurate, beautiful. The story of Maya Thorne is a potent reminder that brilliance often conceals in the most unforeseen locations. We live in a world that assesses individuals by their attire, their bank balances, and their positions. Asher Croft nearly lost everything because he heeded the arrogance of a billionaire instead of the intuition of a barista. But in the end, the truth, like robust code, cannot be erased. It always assembles eventually. It reminds us that no matter how far you descend or how severely existence strikes you, your competencies and your integrity are the sole assets that truly matter. Maya lost her employment, her residence, and her security, but she never lost her intellect. And when the instant arrived, one coaster altered history. Wow, what an adventure. Can you imagine being dismissed for spilling a glass of water, only to realize you possess the key to a billion-dollar dominion in your mind? It merely demonstrates be gracious to everyone because you never know who you are interacting with. If you enjoyed this tale of retribution, redemption, and delightful justice, please obliterate that like button. It genuinely assists the channel grow. And do me a tremendous favor. Comment vindication down below if you think the restaurant manager received precisely what he merited. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification chime so you never miss a narrative. I'll see you in the next one on Ebon Stories.